Night had fallen over Kampala, casting long shadows across the city as Ntaale and Amanya prepared to confront Odoi. The plan was simple: catch him off guard, force him to reveal his true intentions, and end this dangerous game once and for all. But deep down, Ntaale knew that nothing about this situation was simple. The meeting was set for an isolated spot on the outskirts of the city, a rundown building where the operation had begun. The place held too many memories, both good and bad, but Ntaale steeled herself. Tonight it would all be over. As they arrived, the tension between Ntaale and Amanya was palpable. They exchanged a brief glance, each silently acknowledging the risks they were taking. Ntaale's mind raced with possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last, but she had made her choice, and there was no turning back. The building was eerily quiet as they entered, the air thick with anticipation. Ntaale's heart pounded in her chest as they made their way through the darkened corridors, every step amplified by the silence. Finally, they reached the main room where Odoi was waiting. He stood near a table, his back to them as they entered. Ntaale could see the tension in his posture, the way his hand rested just a little too close to his pocket. She knew he was armed, just as she and Amanya were. This was a standoff, and it could end in blood. "Odoi!" Ntaale called out, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We know what you've been doing. It's over." Odoi turned slowly, his face unreadable in the dim light. "Is it, Ntaale? Or is this just the beginning?" Amanya stepped forward, his hand resting on his concealed weapon. "We're not playing games anymore, Odoi. You can either come clean or we will end this the hard way." Odoi's eyes flicked to Amanya, then back to Ntaale. "You really think I've been working against you? You think I'd betray the people who've been by my side since the beginning?" Ntaale hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at her. Was it possible that she had misjudged Odoi? Could he really be the loyal ally she had once believed him to be? But before she could speak, Odoi reached into his pocket and Ntaale's instincts took over. She drew her gun, aiming it directly at him. "Don't move!" Odoi froze, his hand hovering over something in his pocket. Slowly, he pulled it out, a small, worn photograph. He held it up for Ntaale to see. Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized the faces in the photo. Herself, Amanya, and Odoi, taken years ago during the height of their power. They were smiling, carefree, with no idea of the darkness that lay ahead. "This is what we used to be," Odoi said quietly, his voice laced with emotion. "Before the lies, before the betrayals. We were a family, Ntaale, and now look at us." Ntaale lowered her gun slightly, her heart aching with the memories of what they had lost. "Odoi, I..." But before she could finish, the sound of footsteps echoed through the room. Ntaale turned, her blood running cold as Karungi stepped out of the shadows, a cold smile on her lips. "Well, isn't this touching?" Karungi sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The prodigal children reunited at last. Ntaale's heart pounded in her chest. "Karungi, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to finish what you started," Karungi replied, her voice widening. "You see, while you three were busy tearing each other apart, I've been making my own plans, and now it's time to collect." Without warning, Karungi drew a gun and aimed it at Odoi. "You are always the weakest link, Odoi. Too sentimental, too trusting, but don't worry, I'll make sure you're remembered fondly." Ntaale's instinct kicked in, and she lunged towards Karungi, trying to knock the gun out of her hand. A struggle ensued, the two women grappling for control as Amanya and Odoi watched in shock. But Karungi was stronger than she looked, and soon she had the upper hand. "Enough!" Karungi snarled, pushing Ntaale to the ground. She aimed the gun at Ntaale, her eyes cold and merciless. "You should have taken my offer, Ntaale. Now you'll die, just like the rest of them." But before she could pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out, echoing through the room. Karungi's eyes widened in shock as she staggered back, clutching her side as blood began to seep through her fingers. Ntaale looked up in disbelief as Karungi fell to the ground, revealing Amanya standing behind her, his gun still smoking. He had saved her. For a moment the room was silent. The weight of what had just happened sank in. Ntaale slowly got to her feet, her eyes locked on Amanya's. You saved me. Amanya's expression was unreadable. I couldn't let her kill you, Ntaale. We've come too far for it to end like this. With a mix of relief and guilt. Amanya, Ntaale, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Ntaale nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. It's over now. We can move on. But as the three of them stood there, catching their breath, Ntaale couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. And then she noticed it. The faintest hint of a smile on Karungi's lips as she lay on the ground, bleeding but not yet dead. In a flash, Karungi's hand moved, revealing a small device in her palm. Before Ntaale could react, Karungi pushed the button and a deafening explosion rocked the building. The force of the blunt sent Ntaale, Amanya and Odoi flying across the room. The world around them became a blur of smoke and fire, and the sound of crumbling walls filled the air. Ntaale struggled to stay conscious, her vision fading in and out as she tried to find Amanya and Odoi in the chaos. Finally, the dust began to settle, and Ntaale found herself lying on the cold, hard ground. She coughed, her lungs burning from the smoke, and tried to push herself up. Her ears rang from the explosion, and for a moment she couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. But then she heard a voice, faint but unmistakable. Ntaale. She turned her head and saw Amanya, his body crushed and bloodied, but alive. Relief washed over her, and she crawled towards him, ignoring the pain that wrecked her body. Ntaale, Amanya said again, his voice weak but determined. We made it. Ntaale nodded, tears streaming down her eyes. Yes, we did. But before she could look around, she realized Odoi was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in and she began searching through the rubble, her heart pounding with fear. Odoi, Odoi, where are you? Finally she found him, trapped under a pile of debris, barely conscious. Odoi, she cried, trying to free him. Hold on, we'll get you out of here. Odoi's eyes flustered open, and he managed a weak smile. Ntaale, I'm sorry, I didn't want it to end like this. Ntaale shook her head, tears blurring her vision. It's not over, Odoi. We'll get out of this. We'll start over, just like we planned. But Odoi's smile faded, and he shook his head slowly. No, Ntaale, it's too late for me. But you and Amanya, you can still make it. Ntaale's heart broke as she realized the truth. Odoi wasn't going to make it. Odoi, please, don't leave us. Odoi reached out his hand, trembling as he took hers. I'll always be there for you, Ntaale. But promise me you'll live for all of us. Ntaale nodded, her tears falling onto his hand. I promise, Odoi, I promise. With that, Odoi closed his eyes, a peaceful expression settling on his face. Ntaale watched as the life slowly left him, her heart breaking with every passing second. When it was over, Ntaale collapsed next to Amanya, her body shaking with grief. The two of them sat in the wreckage of their past, the weight of their choices pressing down on them. But even in the midst of their despair, there was a flicker of hope. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. And now they had a chance to start anew, to build something better from the ashes of their past. As they walked away from the burning building, the city of Kampala stretched out before them, a symbol of the future they still could shape. Ntaale and Amanya had lost much, but they had gained something invaluable, a second chance. Together, they walked into the uncertain future, leaving behind the shadows of their past, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they could face it together. As the first light of dawn broke over Kampala, Ntaale felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but now, at last, there was hope. The city that had once been a battleground was now a place of new beginnings. And as Ntaale and Amanya disappeared into the morning light, they carried with them the memory of Odoi and the promise they had made to live and find happiness no matter what. Wow, what an ending! Thank you so much for sticking with Shadows of the Past until the very end. I'm really curious to hear what you thought about that twist. Let's break it down in the comments. What are your thoughts on Odoi's final actions? Do you think he redeemed himself? How do you think Ntaale and Amanya will move forward after everything they've been through? Do you think they'll end up together? Do you think they will change? Please share your thoughts in the comment section. And bye for now.
Thank you for watching. Please share, like and subscribe for more entertaining and compelling stories. Hit the notification bell to know when we have another upload. See you soon.